All right, so obviously reproduction in humans cannot happen with just a female reproductive system. There has to be a male reproductive system involved at some point, or at least certain parts of the male reproductive system. I'm thinking about like in vitro fertilization, that sort of thing, but we can talk about that later too. So for the male reproductive system, there are a couple of things to note. We always start when we're talking about the male reproductive system in the testes. That's where the sperm are created, and since sperm are the main cell involved in reproduction, that's kind of where we focus. So the sperm start their life, or meiosis occurs here in the testes. The epididymis is where they go to kind of get their tails and mature a little bit. And then when the sperm are ready to leave the body, they travel through the vas deferens, through a series of different glands here that are all located through here. And all of these glands secrete fluids which help to nourish the sperm. Because think about if you were just the size of a nucleus with a little tail and you had to swim, the average vagina is like 4 inches long. So if you had to swim up a 4-inch vagina, in a cervix, through a uterus, which is approximately the size of your fist, and then into some fallopian tubes, that's a really long swim for you, right? So it needs all of these fluids to keep it nourished because there's not a lot of cytoplasm there. Remember how very small the sperm are when they're produced? So then it will finally come out through the urethra and it will exit the penis. So there are a couple of things that are different about the male reproductive system from the female reproductive system. The female reproductive system is relatively straightforward and all of the parts are more or less, they are used for reproduction. Well, in the male reproductive system, it's a little bit different than that because as you can see, the bladder sits directly on top of this prostate gland, and the exit for urine from the body is through the urethra. Well, the exit for sperm is also through the urethra. So this has the urethra has dual functions. It has both an exocrine, or an excretory function, and a reproductive function. The same with the penis, which is, the urethra goes through the penis. The bladder, however, is not involved at all in reproduction. Okay, so it's important that even when you look at male reproductive system pictures, almost always it will show you the bladder. But it's important for you to remember that the bladder has no reproductive function whatsoever. If a male did not have a bladder, they would still be able to reproduce, assuming they had all the other parts. So anyway, so here we go. Another thing we need to talk about is the scrotum. The scrotum is a muscular sac which houses the testes, and it can move, right? So when men are in colder environments, the scrotum will contract and it will bring the testes closer to the human body. That's because average human body temperature is what? Oh no, we don't talk about Fahrenheit. 36? Isn't it 37? 36 point something, did you say? Oh, I think it's 37. Okay, anyway. 37. We're going to go with 37 because that's what's going to be on your region. So sperm need it to be warm, not as warm as the human body, but not really cold either, because if it's too cold, they'll die. So the scrotum allows for the adjustment of the testes closer to and farther away from the body, depending on how warm it is externally, to maintain the optimal temperature for sperm development. So, number one, most important thing you need to know here is that the bladder has absolutely no reproductive function, none whatsoever, zero, zip, zilch. Okay. The seminal vesicles. Seminal sounds a lot like that word semen, which is the fluid that has all of the nourishing properties to it that help to nourish the sperm. And it also contains chemicals that will neutralize the acid in the vagina. Remember in our Life's Greatest Miracle movie, it said that the vagina was very acidic. Yeah. So it's really a harsh environment for sperm. So males, to combat that, have ended up nourishing with a fluid that will help to reduce the acidity somewhat so that the sperm can actually make it. The prostate gland is going to secrete that neutralizing fluid, which is going to prevent any negative effects from the acidity in the vagina. And also, urine is pretty acidic, and since males use the urethra for both reproduction and for getting rid of their liquid waste, the urethra has to be neutralized, I guess, so the sperm are more likely to survive. There are some other glands as well, like the bulbourethral glands and the Cowper's glands, and they just secrete more fluids. Every gland has kind of something special and important that it adds, but the ones that we focus on mostly in the Regents exam are the prostate gland and the seminal vesicles. The majority, the other glands, really we don't talk about very much. So the urethra is the exit for both sperm and urine. And then, of course, the penis is the main organ of reproduction. Remember, its main reproductive function is to deposit sperm into the vagina. It has a completely different excretory function, but its reproductive function is to deposit sperm. The scrotum is the muscular sac that maintains the optimal temperature for sperm development, like we just said. And then there are the testes. The testes are paired. There are two testes. One scrotum, two testes, in case you were wondering. Testes are paired organs that produce sperm and also testosterone, which, as we just mentioned, is the male sex hormone. Then the epididymis, which is one of my absolute favorite words to say. I don't know why, it's just fun. The epididymis is the place where sperm is stored so that it can mature. And when it's ready to leave the body, the vas deferens will take it out through the vas deferens connects to the urethra. So the sperm will travel through it during ejaculation. You're familiar with the term ejaculation from health class? That would be when all of the... Yeah, well, it's like ejecting, but ejaculation, I think, specifically refers to reproduction when the semen and the sperm and all of the other fluids leave the penis. Okay. Paired. Let's talk about things that are paired here. Testes, are they paired? Scrotum? No. What about epididymis? Yep, there's one on top of each testes, so that means there are two. What about vas deferens? Yep, there's two of those. Prostate gland. There's just one prostate gland. It's huge. The prostate gland is well known for what? For cancer. Prostate cancer is one of the most common cancers that males get, and it's also, if found early, it's relatively easy to treat, but if found later on, it can be fatal. Hold that thought for just a second, Seamus. Oh, excuse me. How many of you have heard of a vasectomy? An ectomy is when you cut or remove something. So what do you suppose the vasectomy is cutting? The vas deferens. So a vasectomy is a procedure that sometimes males have if they would like to not have further children. And it snips the vasectomy, and then it prevents the sperm from actually leaving the penis. So it's still created in the testes. Everything else can still function as it normally does. Just the sperm simply cannot get out, hopefully, if they did it correctly. The testosterone works a little bit differently. The testosterone doesn't leave the body in like the sperm would. The testosterone is secreted and then travels through the bloodstream to wherever it needs to go. So that's got a different mechanism. Let me think. Is there anything else we need to know about this? I don't believe there is, unless you have questions for me at this point. All right, so we will end our discussion of the male reproductive system there.